I'm really starting to feel bad for DC Comics. I mean, they came up with the comic book character, but year after year, they just can't get it right. And now this guy, yikes. As it turns out, Will Smith, he isn't the only Hollywood star knee-deep in controversy right now. He's got some company in Ezra Miller. Now, at the end of March, Warner Brothers executives, they held an emergency meeting to discuss Ezra's future with the studio following the star's arrest for disorderly conduct and harassment in a Hawaiian bar. Now, in a lot of ways, this is totally unexpected as Ezra, well, he's one of the most popular and accomplished actors under 30 in Hollywood. But if you look a little deeper into Miller's story, well, you'll unearth some troubling behavior. Whatever those film executives decide to do with Ezra's contract, well, one thing's for sure. Their decision, it won't be based solely off of what happened in that bar. Now, Ezra, he's been acting strangely for a while now. I mean, have you heard his message to the KKK from earlier this year? If so, well, let people know in the comments down below. But for the rest of you, stay tuned as we figure out if the Flash can get himself out of this one in our latest episode of Where Are They Now? Ezra Miller was born on September 30th, 1992 in Wyckoff, New Jersey. Now, when Miller was a teenager, the family moved to Hoboken, and Ezra, well, he began taking the subway to auditions for the first time. Now, that's when the late theater director Elizabeth Swados, well, she cast Miller in a revival of her Broadway hit Runaways. One night after performing, Will Miller was approached by a complete stranger who offered him a card and promised to get him work in film. Now, Miller, he was creeped out by this guy, but this meeting, it would lead to an audition for a lead role in a film called After School. Now, this is a dark drama about a prep school student who captures the overdose of two girls on video.
Hey, Mom. I think I'm not a good person.
When speaking with The Hollywood Reporter about their first film, well, Miller would reveal, that was a great film experience because of how up it was and like a psychotic filmmaking process with young kids. And then I was just hooked to film. Miller would follow up After School with a breakout performance in Lynn Ramsey's We Need to Talk About Kevin, one of the darkest and most disturbing films you're ever gonna see. Trust me on that one. It's not for me.
Right around dessert, you can ask about drugs. Real careful, because you don't want to scare me into, lying my head off. So you have to say how you've experimented.
In that project, Will Miller, he portrays the title character, a deranged high school student who murders several classmates with a crossbow. And after completing shooting for that project, Will Miller would take the weapon home as a memento. Despite all this unquestionable early success, Will Miller's journey in Hollywood, it didn't get started turbulence-free. Now, the star has admitted in interviews that he suffered through a Me Too movement with an unnamed director and producer. He told The Hollywood Reporter, "They gave me wine and I was underage. They were like, hey, want to be in our movie about a gay revolution? And I was like, no, you guys are monsters. That's what Hollywood is. I thought we all knew we were sex workers." Often considered to be one of the first non-hetero film superheroes, Will Miller prefers the pronouns they or them, and he identifies as queer. Or at least he does when he's willing to put a label on it, which isn't that often. Now, he finished this with The Hollywood Reporter by stating, "I don't identify. Queer just means no, I don't do that. I don't identify as a man. I don't identify as a woman. I barely identify as a human." Furthermore, in June of 2011, while filming The Perks of Being a Wallflower, well, Ezra was a passenger in a vehicle that was pulled over for a broken taillight. Now, when police approached the vehicle, they discovered 20 grams of marijuana, which was in Ezra's possession. A judge would later drop the drug possession, but Ezra, he was still charged with 2 citations of disorderly conduct, and he was ordered to pay a fine of $600. Now, a few years later, well, Ezra, he would be selected to star in 2 gigantic Warner Brother franchises. We're talking Fantastic Beasts and The Flash in the DC Extended Universe. Now, after putting in a few years of hard work, well, Ezra, he's become one of the most in-demand actors in all of Hollywood. So why is he, or I mean they, well, throwing it all away now? According to a police report filed at the end of March, well, Ezra Miller, he became agitated and involved in an altercation with complete strangers after a couple began singing karaoke at a Hawaiian bar known as Margarita Village. Miller was heard shouting obscenities at the couple before grabbing the microphone away from the woman and then lunging at her boyfriend. Now, after the event, Will Miller was arrested and charged on both counts before being released on $500 bail. Now, the incident, it took place the day before the newest Fantastic Beasts movies. It was set to premiere. Most troubling of all, however, might be what happened after. Now, the local couple, they would file a restraining order against Miller, stating that after Miller's arrest, well, the actor tracked them down and burst into the hotel room to threaten them. That's right. Miller reportedly stated at the time, "I will bury you and your slut wife." Now, the restraining order petition also alleges that Miller stole the woman's passport and the man's wallet. That's before he ran off, like the Flash. Now, a judge would grant the restraining order the very next day. Now, as you might imagine, this event is troubling enough to get the executives at Warner Brothers worrying about the future of an individual that they've invested so heavily in. But things look even worse when you put this event into the context or other head-scratching decisions that Miller has made as of recent. For instance, in April of 2020, Miller was recorded attacking a woman at yet another bar, this time out in Iceland. Now, according to sources present at the attack, well, this incident happened after Miller was confronted by a group of pushy fans, but his response is no way, well, feels proportional. The star was immediately walked out of the establishment, but no arrests were made, and Miller had never commented on what exactly had happened. Now, sources suggest that Warner Brothers, they knew of the footage, but they decided at the time not to do anything about it. Then in January of 2022, Will Miller, he would post a video on Instagram wherein they threatened to wipe out an entire chapter of the North Carolina Ku Klux Klan.
Look, if y'all want to die, I suggest just killing with your own guns. Okay? Otherwise, keep doing exactly what you're doing right now, and you know what I'm talking about. And then, we'll do it for you if that's really what you want.
Now, that's not exactly an empty threat. Why? Well, because Miller is well known for having a deep fascination with weapons. Remember that interview with the Hollywood Reporter that I mentioned earlier, and how Miller took home that deadly crossbow from We Need to Talk About Kevin? Well, during that interview, Miller asked the reporter if they would like to see the crossbow. The interviewer declined, and Miller admitted that most people, they don't want to see the weapon when offered. So weird. Now, later in that same interview, Will Miller, he would also adamantly defend gun rights, stating that not only should people be able to protect themselves, but that owning a semi-automatic weapon, it should be completely legal. Sadly, soon after the publishing of that article in 2018, there was a mass shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue, after which Miller's publicist reached out to the Hollywood Reporter and asked them to remove Miller's statements about, semi-automatic weapons. Now, is that because the star suffered through a change of heart due to the unspeakable tragedy, or did they simply not want to look bad? I guess we'll probably never know for sure. I'm thinking it's the first bullet point, and now I shouldn't have said bullet. Anyway, let's move on. Now, there's been plenty of other scandals that have taken place at something more widely known than Margarita Village. Now, Miller, he not only had frequent meltdowns on the set of The Flash, but Hawaiian police would later reveal that they had received at least 10 calls over the past few weeks relating to a series of minor incidents Miller was involved in. Now, this included filming people at a gas station and refusing to leave a restaurant. Now, Warner Brothers, they have more than a year before they have to worry about making a decision on the sequel for The Flash, but at this point, with the long-delayed original project, will it even ever come out? Now, you would imagine with the millions and millions of dollars already invested into the film that the studio, they'll have no choice but to release it. But I suppose nothing is quite set in stone. According to a knowledgeable source inside the studio, the overwhelming feeling in the room when executives were discussing Miller's fate was that they would pause all future projects related to the star in the coming weeks. Now, it's a strange and in some ways sad twist to what seemed like a very promising career. And considering that The Flash is receiving a lot of early positive buzz, it seems like Miller might have totally sabotaged the opportunity to reach the next level of his career, which, is like being a box office star all on his own. But as for what happens next, I guess that's another story for another place and time. After all, this is Where Are They Now? And let's just be thankful he's not in prison or no one got hurt. Seriously. And then he didn't slap Chris Rock. I'll just throw that in there as well. Anyways, guys, let us know what you think about this crazy story in the comments down below. I guess I'll see you guys in another video. Boom!